What is up, guys? Or rather, my team. Today, here is your friend, genius, playboy philanthropist, team lead. And I bring you another crazy, amazing, at least for me personally, a topic is how you can work with actually writing something on the database engines such as MySQL or MS SQL, so things like that. So I would say a lot of people do these mistakes when they present these topics, and it kind of feels like it's really hard. So I'm going to change your mind a little bit here, and I'm going to show you that it's not as hard as it seems, and it's actually way easier. So usually when everyone, or most people rather should say, start by teaching or just showing things, how it can be done on the, let's say, the side of the database. And what I don't really like is they present this as the crazy hard to understand logic and engine. For example, I just made a simple query and you see there's some select top, some like a function, weird things in the brackets, something from, many things written here. So for me personally, why I don't really like this is because it kinda makes hard to understand for someone who's just starting out. So first of all, what I want to show you is you should change your let's say train of thought. Don't really think by using transact. So what's transact or TSQL? So it's something we write here, so it's our language. So usually it's being presented in a way that you can only do things with tables, and that's why if you don't understand the syntax, it's a little bit hard. So actually it's a little bit harder. So yes, there are keywords. So select is usually the main keyword, but what you can do, you can say select 1 + 1, right? And you can say why, what you're doing here. Well, I'm showing you that we can get an answer here. Can that be zoomed a little bit more? Why is that not zooming? I should figure out later how to make. Before it was when you can click Ctrl and plus, but it's not being bigger now. So anyways, the idea here is quite simple. So when you're doing select such as these, so what we just said, add 1 to 1, right? So we say 1 + 1 and we get return 2. So no tables being selected here, nothing of the sorts, and we are kind of doing like programming logic. So what's a very great thing to understand, that actually it's kind of programming here as well. It's just we are used to doing things like this, where you do something, select from something, and you get results, and that's where this logic kind of goes. But actually it can be quite as fun. So what I just showed you can do math. So can you do, for example, something different? Can you do like 2 × 2? Yes, of course you can do. Okay, then you can say, okay, but it just says no column here. Is there an ability to name some? Yes, you can say as, for example, we can say result. And as you can see in our result query, we have the name of the column result, and it's 4. So we can say that this can be as, for example, our result A, and we can also say 2 + 2 as result B, right? And as you can see, I just created 2 columns, and those columns happened in a way that I calculated 2 things mathematically, and we have result A, result B. So everything happening here is in the memory. We're not changing database, we're not breaking anything, it's completely safe. So again, it's really amazing. We're not using any real data, but we are already making things, or we're progressing. So you can, for example, ask, is there some things we can use here just to manipulate? Yes, we can use what's called an aggregate functions. So if you can put specific column here, so that works flawlessly. Let me just remove ILEO. So for example, you have specific columns and you want to get the sum of those columns. So we would use that. So if we try to use like so, it's not going to work, as it says it requires one argument. So aggregate functions work on if you go into, for example, an actual table, and let's select categories as cat. We can say cat category ID, and we want to make some of this. It doesn't really make sense in this instance because this is basically just category IDs are incremental numbers, but you know, I just want to show you an example. So if we add all those numbers together, we get 36. And again, as you can see, there's no column name because it doesn't have name, but we can say sum of things, for example. And since we are naming that, we can say, and we have column sum of things. So why is that important? So if you would using, let's say, different frameworks or just selecting data by hand, you would need a column name for it to work correctly, and you know, you don't want to have errors there. So this is where it helps. So going back to our selection, so what we learn here, that we can select many things. So for example, we can even ask, can you select things like strings? So yeah, you can say select hello, and it says hello. You can say, what if we were to try to say hello plus you? What would you think was going to happen? It just adds strings as you would expect, and you have hello you. So you can ask right now, is there a specific thing where you can use those? Yes, actually there is. You can use what's called a string building, where you're building a select, so to speak, which is going to be executed by this SQL engine itself, and you're going to build it dynamically. So this is way advanced topic, and we can probably going to get back on this later, but for now we can just see that yes, you can add strings, and in this way you can manipulate answers. So for example, if there is going to be a column missing, or for some unknown reason no one entered, you can check for that, you can account for that, and you can actually, you know, go and change that result. So now we can say, okay, this is just selecting. Is there anything else we can do? Yes, you can declare things. You can say this, for example, number, and it's 1. You can say something like that. You want to declare variables, and you know, it would be good to do so. Would you agree? So yes, we can actually have the same syntax. So for example, if we say, let's say select something, we always want to use something. So for example, let's declare declare variable. We call that a number, and you know, let's try learn something. Let's try select our number. Do you think this will work? No, it will not work, because it says you must declare a scalar variable. So we kinda declared it, but not really. So how can we declare it? There's actually a syntax here as you would expect it. You can set it. So for example, we declare a number, right? And we can set that number to be 1. So kind of like that. So we can have ability to do something, and we can also set it. So we also can select it. So what are we getting here? So the base idea here is quite simple. The idea here is that we are selecting things which exist outside of select, and this is quite it's a bit harder to understand when you're starting out. For example, usually when you're selecting something, it's usually when you're selecting something, it's usually the idea that you're selecting from somewhere. So when you say from, this is where the data is coming from, and usually that's how we build our selects. We can join different tables here and we get result. But actually, even when building that specific select, you can have data which was prepared before. Okay, I'm a bit... Okay, I want to drink water. Just give me a second.
Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel and press like.
Okay, and we're back. So, as I said, let's build our number. So we declare, let's call it number, right? As we said below, and we have to say what type it is. So Microsoft engine is quite permissive here to use keywords which we already familiar. So let's say int, and we can set its default value. So what that does, it does, if we were to run this, it's going to say 1. Also, you can ask, can the value not be set? Yes, if we do it like so, obviously we have this thing called null, and null means that there's no data. So 2 things here. Usually it kind of looks the same as you would in programming. You can either set it to some, let's say, default value, just not to work, not to break your average, right? For example, you can have it set to 0, because that makes sense for integers. And you can say, for example, you can set it to nothing just to have that. So how it works? You can actually improve your odds as well. So what you're doing here, you're declaring it before it running. So, and you can do things in let's say a little bit different manner. You can do things as like case. For example, you can make it a case when at number equals 1, then set at number to 1 and so you can do kinda like setting things. You can say something like you can say that, oh, what can we do else? So what is case and what is then? So case essentially is very simple logic to when you want to have or rather I should say, think of if else in programming, in different programming languages. So it is kinda here. You're saying essentially, if something is equal to something, then I want something to happen. So there's quite a few possibilities here. You can say then let's say 1, kind of like that. So for example, we know that it's 0, and we're going to run like this. So it's going to give us an answer of 1. So why is that? So imagine, as I said before, let's not set this to 0, right? And let's run this. So it says null. Why? Because it's not correct. It's not equal to 0. So you can say, we can have logic like, if it's null, meaning that for some unknown reason the thing which is being passed to us is empty, then we can have the default, let's say, value of 0. So when they not equals null, is null, sorry. And when we run this, we always have this very, let's say, fruitful select, where we have our control of it. So here we are adding data ourselves, right? So for us, it's quite easy to understand. You can ask like, but dude, why are we even going through the trouble of doing things like this? So the idea here is simple. What I'm trying to show you and teach you here, that if you go to actual data, if the data is great, let's try to select something. Oh, here is a great example. So we have region WA, and some of the data is null, right? So there are cases where null is good, that you don't have it, and there are cases where you would want to have something instead of not having everything, right? So this is the exact case of that. Imagine you are getting a number and you still want to do some kind of mathematical calculations, and that's why we want to have rather let's say 0 than nothing. So what else can we do? Is there some different cases? Yes, before and you can actually chain this, and you can say then 1 equals 1, for example, then select, then let's say 2, something like that. It's actually quite dumb, and the good thing about is that this works first. And what 1 equals 1, it's one of those hacks I'll show you later, where you can select most things and you can add it. It actually is going to be true. So for us this works. So you can think that from left side to right, you can say is not null, right? So let's do it like so, and now we're getting the answer 2. So what it did, it came here, it wanted to evaluate number, and we say that when it's not null, set it to 0, but it, you know, it was null, so this part didn't pan out. And for us 1 equals 1 is, you know, 1 is equal to 1, so this worked in our favor, and we got the answer 2. So this way we can build answers. So why this is crazy good? This is crazy good in a way that we can have that fine control. So as I showed you here, imagine some of the data is null or non-existent, and this way we can actually have control. If that's, let's say, non-existent and we don't want that, we want to change for something which suits us better, we can have here. So let's do a real world example, and we can say where it says region, right? We have region, we have region here, and we can do case when region is null, right? We can say that then is going to be, instead of WA, is going to be NA. And right, so we run this, and it says NA, right? Why it happens? So remember, we only set one case, so it's going to work only for that specific scenario. So be careful when you're building this, and you have to understand that, you know, this panned out for our things, and it didn't pan out for others. So you can definitely say else just print region, right? Does that make sense to you? It definitely makes sense to me. So now if you run this, we're going to see that we still have the same column which we had before, right? And for those specific things we added logic. So what it does here essentially, since it's going from the left to right, we're saying if the region is null, so meaning it doesn't have data, we call it NA, like no something, or we can say ND, no data. If that makes more sense for you, that's called ND. Let's run it, and it's going to say ND, no data. Or we can set it to WA just to have it false. And I showed you that we can chain then, and we can also say then region is not null, use something, but we can also cover all the other cases by else. So everything else which doesn't cover this specific thing we want to check for is going to fall into else. And that's why if region basically has some kind of data there, it's going to print that always. So this is an example of real world printing where we're manipulating. So in the actual database, some fields have missing data here, but we're making in the case where it doesn't, right? Now we can also show something a different example with, remember we had with numbers, so we say reports, right? Let's make it like so, and we can say average, so it's average, and let's say reports 2, right? We're calling this yeah, so I fixed it. I made smaller amount of things we're selecting just to keep that more concise and more workable. So yeah, that's how we get you know, some kind of result, and that is very, very good for us. Now, what can we do else? So we learned here that you know, we can do many things. So can we somehow change this? Yes. When selecting this, we can, well, at least theoretically, set number to 1, right? And if we run this, it's going to say, oh no, the syntax is incorrect, it's not how it goes, and how are you doing this? So for me, actually, it doesn't make sense. Well, let me rephrase that. Some syntax is very semantic on this, let's say, layer, on this specific language, this specific thing we're working on, and some things are quite less logical. So for example, let's go to very simple. So here we say we are selecting employee ID, last name, first name, and we're averaging reports to, and we're selecting that from table called employees, which exists in Norfin database, and we are grouping by these columns. So it seems very semantic, it makes sense, and sometimes you can say, but wait, why can't you just say something like set number equals 1? Yeah, so there is thing where you can set, and but this is not the case, and here you would say, okay, what if we just say number is like set? You can say you want to check like equality. It's not, this is then, we're saying then do something. So can you say that number equals 1? Again, you would expect, okay, but can we have like a set, like a function, right? Again, it's not exactly so. So I would say, again, some things might look logical and some things might look less logical. So this is just how it goes. And the idea here is that you actually have to set things before, right? So if you say like set year, so it's not going to work like this. So you actually say we are setting at number, right? And then it equals to this. So you would think that, oh, okay, you know, how about this? And one would think that it should work like this. If it's not working in the then case, then you would think, oh, what if I just say select and then we use set something? Again, this is just one of those things. And you would think, yeah, you know, if we are selecting this, why that doesn't work? Because we are selecting on the number. So is there a way to do this? Yes, you can do it like so. So if you just call it like this, it's going to say, oh, your command has completed successfully. This is one of those things where if the output isn't clear, so it completes. So let's do it like so. Select at number, right? And now it's going to be 0. So what just happened? What the hell just happened, and why it works the way it works? So first of all, we're declaring this part is understandable, and now we are selecting this. So if you just say select this, it somehow says commands completed successfully. What just happened? So why selecting a number here is a command? Because it just so happens but we are assigning something to this variable. And even though we are saying select, and you would think that select usually just works you know, to output something, that's not exactly the case. In this case, when we are making logic like this and we're saying number equals, what we're doing by this part, even though it says select, we're assigning this, and it kind of works as a command. So if we select that number again without any underlying logic, this time it goes and tries to look at this number. So if we do it like so, it's a 0, even though here it's null, and here we're changing to this. So this is one of those quirks of SQL. You have to understand, as I said, it doesn't necessarily make sense. So for me, when I started this, this was one of those things where first I looked at it and I thought, oh my god, it just everything here makes a lot of sense and it's super semantic. And I was like, oh, you can do addition, you can do division, there's aggregate functions, we can do a lot of things. And after that I was like, okay, but some things make less sense. Like, for example, why can't I just set this to that? For me, in my mind, that makes sense. How about if I don't do select at all? What if I just say like this? Oh, so now it works, right? If we don't select it as a command and we do it like so, it says command completed successful. So set means to set, to basically change what's there, and if we do it like so, the result is the same. So one might ask, well, this makes sense. If you say set and you make that variable to be equal to this 0, since we made this case, does it make sense to you? I would say yes, because I'm setting. So setting, basically, if it were a programming language, I would say just without the set one, we would say, since it's declared, we do it like so, and it should work. In most programming languages, it would work like so, right? But since it's not, the exact programming language we have to use specific keywords to do the same things. So yeah, we're setting this as a command, it works. Now, why making a select, since we're kind of pretty much selecting always does it command, it's super weird. It's super weird. It's just one of those things. And if we want to get that, we do it the same. So again, try to look at this transact TSQL as let's say 90 or 95% semantic thing, where you say what you want to do and it mostly makes sense. But keep in mind that it has rows and columns, and the underlying logic was to first and foremost work with those rows and those specific columns, rather than being a full-fledged, let's say, back-end object-oriented programming language. So just keep that in mind, and I think everything will work out great. So yeah, this was very simple introductory case into SQL. I didn't show all of the different operations. I could spend this time by showing all the selection procedures used on that, but I just wanted to show a different perspective of it, rather to understand it in a different way. And this was my 2 cents. And on the different topics, on the different lessons, we will cover things like what is the NIF, right? There are different ways to go about it, and we'll see how it all goes and stacks up on top of our rows and columns. So thanks for watching.
Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel and press like.